everybody. It's Cara from Nine Lives Paranormal, and I am here with Hamis Estacio and from the Wardruna experience, and we're going to talk about all things Hollow and what they're going to be bringing to you guys as attendees. And this is a very, very important topic, and it's one close to my heart. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome them. Hello.
How you guys doing?
Thank you for having us.
Oh, thank you for being here. So we've been in contact before, and we've been talking about how important your topic is. So why don't you explain to everybody what exactly your topic is and what you're going to be doing at speaking about at Hollow?
Yeah, so with Wardruna, it's we say the Wardruna experience. Anytime we make an appearance somewhere, we call it the experience. We're basically Wardruna. That's how people could find us. But the reason why it's a very important topic for the Hollow Paracon Film Fest is it's all basically about generational trauma and healing from that, and how a majority of the time why we're involved in the paranormal is a lot of the paranormal issues that we run into are based off of trauma. So probably about 98% of home cases have to deal with some kind of trauma, PTSD, or some sort of healing that a family needs to do. And we have that Rolodex. So over time, when Stacia first had the vision to start this over 20 years ago, we look at it as healing that generational trauma to the point where people could move on in their lives in a more positive instead of the negative, instead of keep chasing what we call their familiar demons, whether it be addictions, PTSD, those types of things that might manifest those issues, either with the family, manifest them into the house, objects, anything like that. And we want to discuss it in the point where to show what the Rolodex is and to let some of the other groups know that they do have somebody they could refer people to when they get stuck. Just like anything else out there, if you're not feeling like you want to be here anymore, there's a phone call that you could make to help. And our group is here to help in the same aspect, where if you're having an issue that you're stuck on, whether it be paranormal or just metaphysical, anything in general, just even for yourself as being outside of that type of group, that you could call us and we could put you in with the right person. A lot of times we deal with a lot of military people because we have a lot of the groups that oversee us. So military people will be sent to us, which is great because a lot of times they have to wait for so long before they could actually see somebody. So we have people here that could respond right away that are licensed therapists to help with those situations. And that way we could support them along that nature.
That's fantastic. And you were talking about your Rolodex. So what are some of those things that are in your Rolodex? Like you mentioned that there are therapists. And what other kinds of things are in your Rolodex?
Well, we start, people want to basically call the shamans. I'm a shaman, Tom's a shaman. Everybody doesn't, necessarily always want to go to therapy, but, they have grief and they want to do, the unorthodox way. So we have a large group of shaman that everybody calls. And when you sit down in front of a person and the ancestors start talking and you start pulling off the layers and you're looking at that trauma, what happens is it's easy to then slide them into the therapist. So we do have therapists. That is a network that we're just building larger and larger. It seems like we just can't get enough therapists. But we have hypnotists, we have Reiki healers, we have dietitians. I mean, you name it, it's out there. We're bringing even more on board. We are in talks with somebody who does fitness because, that's also a part of it. So there's many layers there. We have astrologers, which is amazing because, you have people who come and kind of look at, you look at their chart and you can see habits within their chart. Then you move them over to the hypnotist and to the therapist. And it's just this amazing system that everybody's just been working. But it usually does start with the shamans. And, once we start pulling, away the layers there, you can really then, expose the trauma. We had a psychiatrist in from the Cleveland Clinic. Women sat into a session with the permission, of course, of, my clients. And this, after it was done, this psychiatrist said, "You got out in 10 minutes what would have taken me 10 months." I said, "Well, I'm talking to the dead. You're not." You know, we were able to pull so much out. And then they saw the benefits of it. But when you expose the trauma that's in the family, and it's right there and it's raw and the scab is pulled off, it is so easy then just to slide them into therapy. The therapies we do like to do, things like your EMDR, your EBR, we want to just instantly go in and knock this out. We don't want to make this another 10, 15 years of your life.
Right.
That's not what we want to do. So, we move them through the system pretty quickly. And I mean, within a year, we've seen people, coming back saying, "Thank you. This has saved my life."
That's fantastic. I know even from, my personal workings with other groups, after they do the intake, it takes a pretty long time, to go through that system that they have, and say, okay, what's our next step, and from like, again, from personal experience, sometimes it needs to be immediate, it's like, we don't have that time, and that person doesn't have that time to sit there and wait. And I get a lot, when I'm working on cases of, we met, what's the next step? And it sometimes, unfortunately, the system, I feel, in certain instances, leaves them with more questions than answers. Like, where am I supposed to go now? What am I supposed to do now? So I find it just amazing. When you meet, is the intake just with you guys first, or is it you started at a certain level? How does the process begin?
Well, it usually comes as somebody's calling me for an appointment.
Right.
So when they sit down, I look at them. I say, "Are we looking for clarification? Are we looking to talk to the ancestors?" And at that point, I'm already picking up off of them what it is, but I just need to see where they want to go. And I always give them a disclaimer, of what I do, that I always say I'm a generational curse breaker. And I always say the dead are here to fix the shit they created. And, so from there, I just start reading them. And as I'm reading them, during the reading, I'm telling them about the different options they have. Like, we have this, or this is a good time. This therapist would be the best for you. Hypnosis would help with this. So during the whole session, I'm already just putting little things in there. So by the end of the session, they're like, "Give me those numbers. I'm ready." And sometimes I see them a couple more times before they decide to go in. If there is a therapist that they do pick, I ran an occupational health and safety for 20 years in the power plant. So I do really run this how I did the occupational health and safety. And, so I will do kind of like an intake, and I will send it to a therapist that I gave their number. After that, I don't know if they've gone to the therapist or not unless they have come back and told me I've gone to the therapist. There's been times where I've gotten a text from a therapist. I have so and so in the office, and they would like phone support. So, they call me during the session. But, I'll do an intake to, everybody. You're so and so. I recommended you. So if you get it, here is the issue. And I tell the client, "I'm going to do that with your permission. Can I send this to the, hypnotist?" "Absolutely." So, we kind of do, these intake forms on that.
Oh, fantastic. Were you going to say something, Tom? I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's that's like basically your metaphysical side,
Right.
where a lot of people don't want the stigma of going to a therapist. So to welcome to somebody like Stacia or one of the shamans in our Rolodex and all that, and that way you break that down and get them the proper professional help if needed. But it works also on home cases is the same thing. But when we get the home cases, I deal with a lot of the home cases myself
Mhm.
with the intake, along with our partnership with Penn Paranormal and Mary Jo Chudley.
Right.
So we look into all these nationally and internationally. So these are the hard cases, the ones that people can't just seem to figure out, or people need that added help. So we'll take the intake, run them through a questionnaire with my forensic psychology background, really looking at what's really going on, trying to pull away the onion layers
Right.
to get to the root of it. And like I said, majority of the time, we won't even have to go to a house because really the haunting is them chasing their own, what I call demons, not demons and what you think demons, but more of what's holding us back, what our traumas are, and how we manifest them into existence. A lot of times people watch too many shows
Great.
and they want to make an answer to what's wrong with them by placing that on themselves. So we have to peel all those onion layers back. I think in my 40 years, I've dealt with thousands and thousands of cases. When I say case, I could be on the phone with somebody for 5 minutes, or I could spend, back and forth for a year going back and forth to somebody's home.
Great.
But it's to the point where a majority of the time we really don't have to go to the house, but we are able to place them properly and have a solution. I think the problem is a lot of people go in the home cases, they don't provide that solution. And that's the main goal, is to help, your client with that solution, or even to the point you have to help spirit with that solution, where they might be stuck also. Just because the meat suit's gone doesn't mean that they still don't need that type of look of their own trauma that's anchoring in the heritage. How do we release that?
Yeah. It's so true. I mean, when I go into people's homes and, like you said, um, a lot of the stuff that is revealed when you're doing a home investigation, or you're working with a person that feels that they have an attachment, after you get down to the nitty gritty, at least I see, like patterns, like you're saying, of, generational trauma, and people dealing with that, I think we've been remiss, as a society in addressing it too. When I work with other people, and I work with other people from different belief systems, and especially, shaman, curandera, and all other people, you know, they profess that there's a 9-day prayer of elevating your ancestral spirits and making them lighter, and there that is absent, I think, in people's everyday lives, that addressing it and say, and releasing and helping other people who have passed to become to their higher selves. And like I was saying to Tom, one day I was like, we sit here as paranormal investigators, and we say, okay, my phone, has an attachment to it, and it's an inanimate object, but we're saying, okay, this trauma has seeped into something that's inanimate, right? And now we say it's attached, however, here we are, we're living, breathing human DNA, and we haven't addressed what has attached to us, especially when we say, and here I'm going to start my nerdiness, sorry, when they're finding that DNA, from your mother and your mother's mother is now inside you, especially I think it was in your heart muscle, they find that your grandmother's DNA is in you. And we know that the body remembers what the mind forgets from when you're so little, but nobody addresses it. And, it's, to look at yourself and to sit with yourself and to uncover those things is like you said, peel back the layers, is I think is it needs its due, and it needs its time and its space. So I wanted, if you wanted to comment before I ask those.
You're right. It's I like to call it the tangled web of epigenetics. The tangled web we weave our ancestors. So.
We hold 10 generations of trauma within our DNA. And I was just over at University Hospital, speaking to, the genetic doctors, about said, what is encoded and, within us from past traumas can affect your health, your teeth, everything about you, how you live. And sometimes we have to untangle and release things that we never had anything to do with.
Right. Absolutely. I know, like, and I'm sitting here right now, and I'm sitting there going, my grandma? Like, I was like, what did you give me, grandma? It wasn't that necklace when you passed away. little bit more. But anyway, I digress. What do you find, um, if you can put your finger on it, what do you find is the kind of case that you deal with the most? Is it, say, a personal attachment that manifests itself as, say, things aren't working my way, depression or whatever, or home attachments, and where people have a haunting in their home? Which one do you think plays out more in your caseload?
I think probably the best one was there's been a lot of them over the years,
Yeah.
but just to be a little more fresh, we did have one recently that really had to do with family trauma, but that was recognized trauma. Sometimes when you move into a home,
Uh-huh.
every home has energy, how it interacts with you, but sometimes your familiar family trauma and you move into a home, it recognizes that. Let's say people move in a house and the guy that lived there was a military soldier, but anyone. So you may never have anything happen, but the next guy that moves in had PTSD as a soldier. So this spirit or energy of that house might haunt it now or trying to make itself known because it recognizes that familiar energy. So this home that we dealt with, there was a room they called the suicide where four people took their lives there. But the people that lived in there were having that type of trauma in their past too. So it recognized. So that's kind of why it awakens. So the only way to quiet that is make peace with your own. And that way it helps whatever energies in the home make peace also because it saw you do it. And that way it felt like they could do it also to bring that calm to that place, whether it be the land, the house, and all those things that we had to do to help this family come to terms with what they have to deal with and what the family's energy that was left there, the DNA that was left on that house, and how they're dealing with it. Seeing that family deal with it helps that overall in general, that whole property.
What I deal with most is honestly the personal trauma. People are coming to me because it's grief and they want to connect to the loved one. And there's always unanswered questions. It doesn't matter who it is, sitting down in front, unanswered questions. And I mean, I get some beautiful readings, beautiful. And I help them through the grief. And it could be just as simple as let's get you some grief counseling, maybe just some art therapy, get you with some like minded people. But then there's ones that it's just hardcore trauma. I mean, hardcore trauma that it takes a while. I mean, I have one case, I absolutely love her because she is gifted. And she came to me and then I just laid everything out. She looked at me and goes, I don't like you and I'm never coming back. And she left. I'm like, okay, I gave her all the resources, everything. Here you go. A year later, I have this appointment. She comes in. I went, oh, hi. How are you? She goes, well, you were right about everything, but I really still don't like you. That's fine. You don't have to like me, but please sit down. So we went over everything. And from there was something I did give her the number to the therapist, the number to Reiki, the number to the hypnotist. And she started working the system. So she comes into for a third appointment. It was actually something very personal, and I helped her through it. And she goes, I've been here for, like 3 hours. I said, I know. And she goes, I don't have the money for this. I said, there's no charge to you. That's not why you came in here. He's just happened to fly out here. We're good. Go on your way. Still getting therapy. She comes back, and I look at her and say, oh my God, you're gorgeous. All of a sudden, she's glowing. She's glowing. She's radiating. And I mean, she's just beautiful. And I kept telling her that. I get her into art therapy. I see her, says, you're radiant. I said, look at you. And all of a sudden, you see her lifting her head up, and she is beautiful. She's gifted. And I laid out, I said, I want you to do one of my fairs with me. She goes, you trust me? And said, oh, I do. She's now literally part of the Wardruna group.
That's phenomenal.
And I just, I believed in her. She worked the system. Even though she says she didn't like me, I knew she did.
Right.
She didn't want to hear what I had to say.
Right.
She stuck to it. She stuck to it. I remember walking her to the mirror and saying, you need to look in your eyes. You're gorgeous. And it took me a couple minutes to get her to face herself in the mirror. And then I knowed her. And, that's the kind of stuff we do. And, but when the ancestors are coming in, giving that support, because I always tell them, like I said, they've dealt with this shit they created. They want to fix it. They're on the other side. What you're left is holding the back.
Right.
And the one thing I like to explain to people, and I built the system because of my trauma and the generations of trauma that came from Russia.
Right.
I looked at my mother was so broken. And my mother was also a shaman. The whole family is gifted. We're Carpathia Russos. And it is a very known gifted group. But my mom was such a broken individual that I was denied a mother. And I was talking to my sister, and I said, we were talking about a mushroom hunting, going into the forest and picking mushrooms, and then gardening and canning and sewing. And, our dad's taught us, electrical work and laying block and roofs. I mean, my God, if there's, a zombie apocalypse, we got these stuff for them.
We got it down.
And I had to sit back with that. And I went, my mother wasn't leave it to be. She wasn't a Hallmark love language wasn't giving me a hug every day and saying I love you, but her love language was teaching us how to, forage and can and sew. And so I tell people, don't put love to what you think it is. Look at what they gave you and what they were capable of giving you and focus on that. And once you start focusing on that, the vibration of love is so high. That too helps heal you. I put so much of my trauma of my mom behind me. And I sit there and I'll just smile about doing little things with her in a moment. And that has helped Joe believe. And that's how I've been, helping others. Because when the ancestors come in, they're very nostalgic. They always want to show me food or that they crocheted or worked on a car. And they want to show me their love language. And I might get somebody like, oh, here's a casserole recipe. They're like, oh, that was my mom's go-to casserole. Oh, she gave that. She loved that. Well, that's the mother. So that's the part I deal with. As the home places, I'm called in if needed, but that's if they need the medium to come in and do whatever I need to do, I do it. But that's fun. But I do the face to face with everybody, or even on the phone. I do clients all over the world. But my portion is that. That's what I.
Yeah, everybody. I mean, we're doing it as a puzzle piece. Everything they do is important. If they're missing, makes the puzzle incomplete. Even though they're all running their own businesses and all that on top of it, they are part of that Rolodex, that puzzle, which is very important. Even like with home cases and all that. Yes, I oversee them. Do I go to all of them? No, but there's times that I do. One of the things that started years ago was my ability to able to console the dead and see why they're still here, and if they want to leave, and show them that exit is, and they make their own decision to leave. Case in point, one of the craziest cases I ever had had to do with trauma. A lot of times with our war veterans, you go back in World War One, World War II, they saw some incredibly traumatic things and just never left them. Even people in Vietnam, whatever. But usually to get rid of that thought, they would expound by becoming an alcoholic, drugs, or be very kind of blow up and have a short fuse with their family. So I went to this house, found out the history of the house. But as I'm trying to communicate with whatever was there, because initially it showed that the family living there, the young boy was being scratched. Sometimes it doesn't mean it's a demon. Sometimes it's somebody that wants to get their story out.
Right.
So if they see that you're gifted, which this boy was, but he didn't realize it, he was getting scratched. It wanted his attention. I need to say something. Please hear me. So we came in, and I was able to communicate with the spirit. Come to find out, he was a World War II vet. And the reason why I found out that he might have been an alcoholic is the clue. The old Scooby-Doo, get all the clues and figure what's going on. But I had an SLS camera and her figure kept pointing down. Finally hit the lights on to see what it's pointing down on. It was a can of liquid death. So that told me that he might have been an alcoholic. And then once it was like bing, bing, bang, and the communication started getting more and more and more to the point where he was so sorry the way he was during life and never got that help. He wanted to apologize to his family. And the only way he thought he could do that to help them move on was for us to put daisies on his wife's grave for him and play their favorite song, Dream a Little Dream.
Wow.
So I had to go on Find a Grave and find out where this grave was. And I saw where it was. It just shows a picture, doesn't tell me exactly
Where. Mhm.
exactly. So I get to the cemetery thinking, well, it's a small town, it can't be that bad. I pull in and there is probably a couple thousand gravestones just by viewing this. I'm like, oh my God, how am I going to find this? It's going to take me all day. And was kind of missing out at the time. So I drove in and then decided at one point, I'm just going to stop here. It's kind of centrally located. I get out of my car and I go to the left. It says, I'm just going to start walking up. I walked 2 gravestones and there it was.
Wow.
I said, that's it. That's the song. I waited for my partner to come back from vacation and we went back, and this was around winter time, Christmas time. And, she went to go get some daisies, but at winter time, finding daisies is pretty much near impossible.
Yeah.
And thank God, I don't know what it was, the chances of finding daisies. So we go there, no snow on the ground, luckily. So, hard ground. So what we decided to do was do a little ceremony in remembrance and all that for healing. Put the daisies on her grave, played the song and all that. And, later on, I think it was later on that night, because we did this in the morning, the family called us and said, something weird happened. So all of a sudden, all the energy, the heaviness has left the house. So it's no longer there. And then we told them what we did, and they didn't have problems ever again. I always follow up with all of our clients to see how it's going, just to keep them, to make sure that they keep up on things. Because sometimes we go back to old habits, could bring back certain things that were, you rid out of your life. If you bring old habits back and those things could come back, people have to want to heal. You can't make them. They have to make a decision, just like spirits have to make their decision that it's time to level up or wherever they go.
And there's a lot of times, as he's talking about wanting to heal, there's a case that was really dear to me. I did a house party, and all the women in the family, they rent these Airbnbs, they get together, they cook, they paint, it was wonderful. So I'm in the basement, and the first year lady comes down, and instantly this man sits down, and this spirit is fun. He has me laughing. And I said, who is this man? He is on, your mother's side. Go, oh, that's my uncle. And she gives me his name. And said, he is fun. And she goes, oh, he was. So off she goes. Next one comes down. And here is this spirit that comes, presents himself differently, though. Like each time he was changing his face. And she said, this is Uncle so-and-so. I'm like, he was just here last time, but he's doing this. I'm like, okay. So I just continue reading. Next one comes down. Well, the uncle plops down again, but is very loving this time, not joking,
Right.
And I'm just like, okay, what's going on here? So after like 5 or 6 thought each time the uncle's coming in, now I get his daughter. She sits down and I said, oh, the same uncle's here. She goes, which one? I told her, oh no, I'm the daughter. I said, okay. So this reading got a little heavy and he's apologizing. And so as he's apologizing, she's crying and everything. And then what had happened was, is his wife ended up coming down. And I'm telling you, there was like 12 or 13 family members, and this dude popped in every single one. And he was like a chameleon. But when I get to his wife, she is in her 80s and her health is not doing well. the message she gave her, and she's curled up in a ball and she's 12. And I had to stop everything just to, be with her for a month.
Right.
And she's like, I needed to hear these words. I needed to hear him apologize. So, and it was a bit of a drinking problem. And, there's so much that goes on, when somebody's an alcoholic. But then I went upstairs and the atmosphere was just lovely. They're laughing and carrying on. They're telling stories about, him. And I come to find out that this guy was just a jokester. He really was like the life of the party. But to be able to give that to a family member, I mean, I cried the whole way. So,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I'm
yeah.
laughing and I'm crying. And there's sometimes I hit with cases that I have to go to therapy for.
Right.
So, I'm not opposed to doing therapy. There are some hard cases, and as I'm pulling things through, I contact, one of the therapists, like, I need to talk. Like,
Yeah.
this is rough. So then I have to work through the trauma because it might hit my trauma
Right.
in a certain way that it brings up a layer. So I was saying with my clients, there's a lot of times that I'm actually even killing a new layer of myself.
Right. Which is beautiful. It's
I
beautiful.
see. That's why we built so many wonderful friendships within the group.
Yes. I wanted to touch on what you guys were saying too in with a real life experience. So like, like we go into places and, for paranormal investigation, and we work with this antique shop, and the owner of the antique shop obviously knows what we do, right? So she had this guitar, okay?
Mhm.
And she puts it in my hands and she says, "Tell me what you get out of this." Well, I glitched out. Like, and when I use the word glitch, I glitched. Like, I stopped dead in my tracks. I was confused. It was almost like it was almost like I got shocked with electricity.
Yeah.
And I touched it and I looked at her and I said, "Who died?" And she said, "Every male, this guitar was passed from an uncle to his nephew, and both of them had successful attempts at taking their lives over a woman." And so I said, "We need to have this cleansed and whatever before you put it out on the floor, because I glitched. I can only imagine, what would happen, right?" So a couple of weeks go by, or whatever, and another friend, who's a medium, I said to him, "Hey, I want you to look at this guitar for me." And he comes over and he looks at the guitar and he starts saying, "I get death, I get, or whatever." And he goes, and oddly enough, he goes, and now this was, I think, only the second time that I met him. Okay. Oddly enough, it's attracted to you. And so I said, "Me?" And he goes, "I'm getting alcoholism, I'm getting relationships, and it wants to talk to you." And he had no idea that my ex died of alcoholism. And so the fact that, like you were saying, Tom, that trauma kind of, it activates when it finds the trauma and it relates to it like that shared experience, for lack of a better word, the trauma bond, it finds it, you know, which leads me to my next question for you is that, um, when, how do you, well, I would assume you with your Rolodex, but how many times do you find that people with trauma going forward attract same trauma?
It is. It's all the time, and this is the way I'm gonna put it. Just for investigators out there, also,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes we go into a home and we're looking to talk to spirit. The spirit doesn't talk to us, but there's a group of 10. Sometimes that spirit wants to talk to only one person out of that group because there's familiarity there. Brings up similar trauma that they recognize. in theory, when you pass, you don't have to watch anymore. So you know what's going on, past, present, future, whatever. There's no timeline, but they're able to maybe see, in theory, what we're thinking to be able to assist in the afterlife. And they recognize that trauma, whether it be in an object or whether they be there. Also, our ancestors are always around us. Sometimes you get haunted cases where it's not anything, say, new. They say, oh, it goes everywhere I go. It's because it's trying to tell you something. It's an ancestor telling you, hey, this was my trauma. I'm trying to build the bridge for you so it doesn't happen again, but you still have to make that free will decision. I'm just trying to get your attention.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Did you want to add?
The what?
I was talking.
Oh, no, I'm out of breath as we were talking. I forgot that I left our meatloaf in the oven. So oven percent. Where I had burnt meatloaf.
No. That's important. I like meatloaf.
Yeah. But this is a special recipe that I make. I call it meatloaf, but I actually call it buffalo.
Oh.
The viewers want to know something a little off topic here, it's but I take ground chicken. I put the blue cheese crumbles.
Right.
My cut up celery, like you get. I put that in there with some eggs, of course, and the buffalo wing sauce and some breadcrumbs, mixed together, put it in, throw it in like a meatloaf, and I call it buffalo stuff.
And that's delicious. It sounds delicious because like wings is like my favorite thing, like buffalo.
Love this.
Yeah.
It's like my favorite thing. Every time I go out and it's like, you're like, what do you want? The first thing I do is I look for the wings. Like I look for the wings.
Hey, since we're on the topic of food, that is, I laugh because I always say, the spirits, don't be surprised, they're going to talk about food. But what do you remember about your family members? Who made what for what holiday, and somebody always brought the same dish. And that is one way, to remember the ancestors is by cooking and, doing the things that they have taught us for generations. And that's why, like on the Day of the Dead, they have a huge celebration. Or All Saints Day, every church has the buffet, to feed the ancestors. So actually cooking the recipes that have been passed down for generations is very, very important. Cooking brings joy, laughter, even if, love, even if, it is a portion of maybe we're starving because it's the Holocaust and you're in the ghetto, or you're still, giving something to somebody, for survival and love. Those memories are there. And once again, we're always trying to reach that higher vibration. So when you make the chocolate chip cookies that you always made every time you went to stay at grandma's house, you're raising that vibration up. So, cooking is very important and part of the healing process.
It is. I've had this theory for a while that I always try and put into practice. And when I'm doing spiritual counseling, I try and help them too. She talks about the love language, but we also have our self-love language too. It's our reminders. All right. Now, if you're having a bad day and you're driving along, all of a sudden your favorite song comes on and you take yourself back to that moment that you first heard that song and it made you feel good. So you take your brain back to that moment. Next thing you know, you're smiling in the car, the bad day's gone away and it's helped your future. But it's the same thing with food. Like for me, if I have chicken cutlet, it reminds me of what my mom used to make. And it brings me back to those good memories of that love language that my mom cooked for us. And it makes me feel better. That's what food's about. That's what music's about. People don't understand that, hey, a higher being gave us these things of love to vibrate us higher.
Right.
It's a matter of, taking ourselves out sometime out of that situation that's driving us crazy and just look on the outside. I change up things. I tell people, if you're in this circle going over and over again, I'll say, hey, go listen to your favorite song. What is something that your mom made you that made you happy when go try it. Go take a walk out in the woods, get back in touch with nature. Those are the things that will jog your memory or maybe rewire what's gone broken for that moment.
That's fantastic. And again, it's interesting that you say that, because I notice a lot when I'm doing, like, if I'm part of a seance or a mediumship circle, a lot of times the reader, that they'll say, I see a person making a pie in the kitchen, or whatever. And a skeptic would say, well, that's something that's something that people do. But if you think about how society is today, how many people are sitting making a pie? People don't. They take a sourly, they pop it in the oven, and that's that. No one is it putting that intention into making the pie anymore that they did, say, when we were growing up. Like, my mother would cook from scratch, and and things like that. So you're absolutely right that food is imbued with that love and that love language, and it heals. Even going back, to my ancestry, the foods, in terms of the ingredients of the food, and what they were symbolic of, the basil, the whatever, you're healing the family at the same time. You're nourishing them spiritually, as well as you're nourishing them in their stomachs. The grains, becoming closer to the earth, the fruits and the vegetables, or whatever, like my grandmother, she used to burn orange peels, and she used to tell you it freshens the air. And I was like, that's gross, I don't know, it's hospital. But I didn't know, I was little, I didn't realize that, what the intention was, at that point. And I think a lot of people, and I tell people too, that these, for lack of a better word, for the people who don't practice things like this, I say, it's in our DNA, to have these ancient practices. It's in us. We all have it. Like, from even the way that we traditionally set up our homes can be brought back to an ancient time, from when we had, like, say, altars in our house. So we have the pictures still on, in our house. All these things reach back, yet we walk forward, and we seem to walk forward without them, but they're still there, and need to be they need to be addressed. I feel, anyway, I could be wrong. I feel they need to be addressed.
Yeah, you're right, because everything's passed down generation to generation. There's traditions,
Right.
and there's your intention or your interpretation of those traditions.
Correct.
Yeah. Again, it's the chocolate chip cookie. Nobody will ever make it like my grandmother did. That was her intention and her love for us. All right. Now, if I make the chocolate chip cookie, am I going to make it the same as my grandma? No, it's my interpretation of her love and intention for me. And I keep passing it on. Is it really different? No, the love is there.
Right.
It's that memory and how I interpret it. We're all different. We all have different fingerprints.
Right.
Our pattern and our traditions and our intention and all that. It's like somebody from another family. If I have a family recipe, they're not going to be able to make it the same. It's a recipe with anything.
Right.
That's our family intention, or that's, how I make something. If you try and take that and make it in your own way, it doesn't have the same intention, or, to go forward in that tradition of that ancestor.
I agree 100%, and it's not that it's any less. It's just, how, like you said, it's our take, for lack of a better word, on that same love that goes forward, right?
I have found all of messages from what I've given readings, that people then send me the dish on holidays that we talked about that day through. Uh, just last Easter, just this past Easter, the young woman came and she sat down with me. She lost her God to SIDS, British Temperance. And this spirit of this child was just beautiful. And she just said, I like apricots. I'm like, oh, honey, you do? And she's like, I like apricots. She goes, I want my mom to make me an apricot dessert. So I looked at the woman and I said, honey, she wants an apricot dessert. She goes, apricot desserts are my favorites. What's that to say? Well, let's make one for Easter. And she goes, I don't know if I can. It seems like the priest to your daughter is asking for you to do this. The pictures and the messages that I got Easter morning, it was just beautiful. She told me I'm crying through this, but I'm also laughing, and it is a portion of healing. It really is. My son passed away 7 years ago, and of course, I like to feed him all the time.
Mhm.
And he was 22, so of course, he liked bar food. 22-year-olds all like anything fried. And I picked up jalapeno poppers in bed. And I put them on the dresser and I said, Bud, there's some poppers for you. I went to bed that night and I heard something on my window screen. And in my window box, where the flowers were, was a little house sparrow. And I'm like, you need to go away. Like, you are not nocturnal. Someone's going to get you. Like, go. This thing just kept pecking at my window all night. So I had a client the next day, and she was in Central Park walking around, and I hear this bird screaming so loud. And she'd walk away, and then you'd hear the bird again. I says, chance is that a little house sparrow? She goes, it will not leave me alone. It's following me from bench to bench and screaming at me. Says, do me a favor, look at it and say, Stephen, we got the message. She goes, Stephen, we got the message. And it went chirp, chirp, and just flew away. So when you feed the ancestors, you will get messages. When you make the food and you sit down with a meal, you will get messages. Just have that cup of tea. I tell them that all the time. Have that cup of tea. Make a cup for them or a cup of coffee. Put some food out for them. It also helps heal that spirit.
That's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. And tonight, actually, I'm actually gonna do that, and I'm gonna try it. I'm gonna make a cup of tea for my mother. So, because she used to drink tea, and I'm gonna try it. Um, so, what do you think where do you think that your field is extremely, like, from what you're explaining to me, is extremely comprehensive, but what do you think is on the edge of what's going to be next in terms of trauma healing and the blending of the spiritual and the psychological? What do you think, like, with the age of how even technology is? And I can tell you right now, I think that connection and is 100% the way we have to stay, but between people and conversation and things like that. But for the just for conversational purposes, what do you think is the next step for your field in terms of exploration or even discovery, or where is the information leading you, as not, because we are investigators down, when it comes down to it, and healers. So what do you think is the next step?
Yeah, we're on the cusp of some big things. I know, we have the connotation of the paranormal field, the metaphysical field, and all that, but I think the change has been coming for a long time. We're on the cusp of it, and even in the psychology of it, with my background, with Stacia's background, and just with the people that are in Wardruna. A lot of the talk therapy, like you said, we won't communicate like we used to. A lot of us are on our phones all the time. So we have to relook at things and go to these meetings to talk about EMDR, DBR, to help the synapses of the brain reconnect. And hopefully, we reconnect with better communication. With better communication and healing, that is going to help us here in the future. Is it going to help us in our lifetime? Like Stacia said, a lot of times healing, you start it takes a few generations before it kicks in. So we're at the cusp of helping that healing for the next generation, the next generation. There's always that twist. We're in the age of Aquarius, there's a lot of changes coming, a lot of equality coming. I think there's more equality coming. I feel that coming, where the feminine energy, the masculine energy are more evened off, where it hasn't been in the past. we're recognizing each other and we're respecting each other and we're trying to push towards that. But the most important thing is that generational stuff. Can we calm that? Can we come up with the answers? Can we start chipping away so the generations to come, are in a better situation where we left it? And that's the way we want it to be. It can't be everything's a demon. Everything's this, everything is that. It can't be just one sided. It has to be a 360 view. We have to look at everything. We got to twist, the people around that we're trying to assist and help them, put them on a path that works for them and their intention and what they're looking out of it, so they can look at themselves in the mirror and know, hey, I like that person. I'm going to run with it. We have to let people look at, sometimes it's ugly to look at ourselves in the mirror, but sometimes we have to give people the hard truth to get to the greatest part of ourselves, that we're able to see ourselves and pass that on to the next generations.
What I see a lot coming forth is breaking down stereotypes, the stigmas that are within the paranormal industry, and also, the mental health industry. I mean, because a lot of this is grief and just understanding and understanding where the grief lies, and that, not what, like you said, not everything's a geek, you know, to even run into something like that, it's very,
Right. Right.
but,
Twice in 40 years.
yeah, we're going to start, we're working on retreats because I would like to have the experience all in one place. Have a retreat where, you come and you sit, and it is from everything, that is from the food to the lectures, to the meditation, see the hands-on healing. Just, that's something that we're actually in the process of working now. And like the next year is, to kind of take this a little bit more on the road and, do these speaking engagements with everybody there. Those things. And, it's standing up, hearing your story, my story, his story, sharing the stories. And once we start understanding each other's story and wholeheartedly listening to a person, that breaks down stereotypes, and that breaks down, any barriers that we have because you're human at that moment.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that. Like I say a lot of times, like when I look at people and I have an interaction with them, right? And let's say it's not a constructive one. I ask myself, to have grace for them, because I don't know what's speaking. I don't know if, it's like you said, that the trauma that's speaking. I don't know, and I don't know if, me and my own being triggers something, because we all have energy, right? So in the same way that guitar made me glitch, I don't know if I'm making somebody glitch, because, I myself might, like my energy might be familiar to somebody else's, and they're like, whoa, it's like, I remember you, no, and it's not specifically me, you know. But yeah, so, like what we were saying, to your point, to have those circles where you can go and have that community where these things can be, addressed and talked about, and people can be themselves and break down those stigmas and stereotypes, and, and get to the root of that whole, human experience of who they are, I think is a beautiful and wonderful thing. And I can't wait to hear, I hear about it, because I might just go, and like, and come and experience it. And I think, the best way that I can with the hollow is, because knowing what you do, I wanted to bring that experience to, to the audience, and see that these things are out there. Because like you were saying, to circle back a little bit, I don't think a lot of people know that these resources are out there, for a lot of people, that it's a viable alternative, and a blending of the medicine, for lack of a better word, the psychology or whatever, and the spiritual and metaphysical, and it's an actual blending of the two. And a lot of some private cases, like I've gone to, I would say, I think they need an energy healer, and or I think they need this, or I think they need a certain kind of pagan belief, like whether it's a Strega, or it's a Curandera, or it's a Santeria, depending on where that energy is coming from. It's not all one dimension, and it all needs a place at the table. So anyway, we're going on an hour. So, and I knew this was going to happen. I knew it was going to happen. We were going to get there, and I was going to be like, oh gosh, I have so much, and we're getting on the hour, or whatever. But is there anything that I forgot that you want to express?
No, everything was
Yeah, we're looking forward to coming to the Hollow
very excited about.
and giving message and giving people, like you just said, that outlet that they might need. If at a home case they don't know where to go, they can reach out to us. We're there to assist. We're not there to take over. Let's just put it that way. We're a resource to help, because mainly when you go into a home case, what do you want to do? You want to come up with a solution. If you're stuck, maybe come see us. Maybe we could help you through that solution, because not only are we going to assist you, we're going to teach you all at the same time, because we want all these practitioners that have enough love and empathy to go into somebody's home and to help them, have that resource and learn. We're here to teach also. Pretty soon, when the website is up and running hard and hardcore like we want, and we'll be giving classes so groups could learn a different way of looking at something to approach it. And that way we could grow, yes, that paranormal industry, but also know that the resources are there to help people, whether they have PTSD or some kind of healing they need to do ancestral, to try and close the gap and help families.
That's phenomenal. I can't wait. I just can't wait to see what's on coming for you guys and at the Hollow. It's gonna be fantastic. So, anyway, to wrap it up, where can people find you right now?
We're on Facebook.
Okay.
It's your Thomas Patrick, where you go under Wardruna, Stacia Wills. So if you just type in Wardruna, it's either me or a music group that I did not know about.
You came up with the name 20 years ago before the music group.
Yeah.
You just beat us to the online stuff.
Yeah, my school guide's like, my family's from the Kiwi and Russ area. So that's, a place where that word is. And that's where my ancestors said it means keeper of the secret to you whispers. And I ran with it. But yeah, you can find us on Facebook. And, we're going to be working over the next couple of days to get everybody's profile up on the website.
Yeah, also methodical management. Aja the Fizzle is our manager for both of us and oversees a lot of the Wardruna stuff. Also, All Access Network Television, we appear on there with a lot of our own podcasts, just anything TikTok, Instagram. I'm under the Archangel or the Paranormal. I do my little videos, all that, just to kind of educate or give little information. That's always fun. So we like to put a lot of fun out there and put some education and just to help people out.
Fantastic. And your new podcast that you're doing now, the True Crime one, the Profiler one.
Yeah.
So
That's a lot of my background, and it's a lot what I bring to Wardruna as a forensic psychologist, behaviorist. So everything in life, you can't script it. It's all your behavior, and like again, any healing that you have to do to have that behavior be in a positive is what we try and help report with that background.
Wonderful. Well, it's been lovely, and I don't want to keep you. And thank you very much, and we'll see you at the Hollow.
Thank you.
Great. Can't wait.
Excited. Thank you. Bye-bye.